In this lesson, we're gonna start filling the cup with water using Bifrost. So let's get started. When you open the scene called Cup Fill Start, you'll notice in the scene I have a cup and I have an emitter, so which is the sphere. And here I prepared for you a layer called Light Setup. This is for rendering and lighting. We are going to cover that later. So I'm going to turn that off for now. So let's emit the liquid. Let's select the sphere. Let's go to perspective view to see it better. And now I'm going to FX tab, and then I'm going to Bifrost liquids, and then I'm going to click on liquid. As you see in the outliner, I have Bifrost liquid, and I have the liquid properties, and I have guide, and I have the mesh. This is for meshing, and I have the emitter. So let's go ahead to the camera and let's hit play and see what's gonna happen. As you see, nothing is happening because we need to select the Bifrost liquid, and then let's go to attribute editor, and here you'll notice we have the master voxel size. So if you decrease this value, you will get more particles, and of course the simulation time will be longer. So we need to change that to a little bit lower, for example 0.1, because it's too high. That's why we don't see any water in the viewport. As you see now, we start getting the water, as you see. And we need to decrease it a little bit more, so 0.05, and let's hit play. As you see, we get better result. And as you see, the emission starting at first frame and then stops. And if I select the emitter, Bifrost emitter, and then in the attribute editor, you'll notice here we have continuous emission. So if I click on that, so now the emitter will continually emit the water, as you see. And when I hit play, and let's say I reach to frame 40, right? And now if I click there and scroll, as you see, the simulation cached on memory. And in the previous versions of Maya, there was a green bar there showing you how much you cached on memory, or on which frame you cached on memory. And really, I don't know why they removed that. So now it's difficult to know on which frame we cached the liquid on memory. I wish they will bring that back. So it was really very helpful. As you see, we don't know where the cache is on the timeline. And if I go ahead to the Bifrost flutes, and if I go to Bifrost options here, you'll see here we have enable scratch caching. So this is how you enable the cache on memory. So if you disable that, you will no longer can scratch the caching or the time slider on the timeline here. And here you'll see we have the maximum RAM usage. So I set that to 28 because I have 32 gigabyte of RAM. If you have 16 or 8 gigabyte, if you have 8 gigabyte of RAM, you need to set that to about 6. If you have 16, you need to set that to 14. I think it's good too. So let's close that, and let's talk about the scale of the scene. So let's go to the perspective view, and you'll notice here every 1 square there is 1 meter for Bifrost. So it's 1 centimeter, right, in Maya, but Bifrost consider every 1 centimeter here as 1 meter. So even if you go to Windows and change the preferences of the scale there, let's see where is the settings. So even if you change the linear to meters, Bifrost will still consider every 1 centimeter 1 meter. So that's why I scaled down the cup. And maybe you are wondering, if every 1 centimeter is 1 meter, why you made the cup so big? and really it's not big, but if you scale it too much then you will get problems with Bifrost. So you need to find a good scale that works for you. So you need to make it something close to the real world. So I know it's big, but it works good for us. So let's go to camera again. And another thing I want to mention, I'm going to Bifrost flutes, and then I'm going to click on display Bifrost HUD. So this is very useful. As you see, I can see how much particles in the viewport I have. This is very useful. As you see, when I click play, as you see, I can see how much particles in my viewport. This is very useful. So we need to go again to the Bifrost liquid properties, and I want to change the master voxel size a little bit more, for example to 0.025, or let's set it to 0.02. It's good. So as you see, the liquid falling down and doesn't collide with the cup. So we need to convert the cup to collider in order to make the cup collide with the fluid. So let's select the cup and let's select the liquid, control and Bifrost liquid, and then I'm going to Bifrost fluids, and then I'm going to click on collider. So let's say you want to remove the collider, you need to select that again and control select the Bifrost liquid, and then go again to Bifrost fluids, and under remove you need to click on collider. This is how you can remove the collider. So let's hit 4 on the keyboard to see inside the cup, and let's hit play and see. As you see, the liquid falling down and colliding with the cup. So another thing, I want to push the liquid to the right. So I can do that by selecting the Bifrost liquid, and then I'm going to Bifrost fluids, and then I'm going to click on, where is the motion field? So I want to click on motion field, and now in the motion field you'll see here we have some fields, for example direction, drag, noise and turbulence and so on. So in the direction, let's click on field direction, and I'm going to push the fluid to the right. Right, it's -z, so I'm going to set that to -1 and this one to 0, and let's see, hit play and see. As you see, the fluid pushed to the right, and as you see we have a problem there, so the fluid escaping from the collider. So we'll fix that later. And another thing I want to mention here, as you see when I click play, as you see we don't have really interesting emission, so we can make it a little bit more interesting by selecting the sphere, which is the emitter, and then I'm going to rigging tab, and then I'm going to deform, and then I'm going to click on texture. So here in the texture I'm going to click on the checkbox, and then I'm going to add a noise. So as you see we deformed the emitter, but that's too much, so I'm going to scale down the amplitude, something like that, and I'm going to change the noise type to wispy, for example. You can change it to any type you want. So as you see, when I changed that to wispy, the emitter jumped up. As you see, wispy jumped up. So I need to select the sphere and move it down a little bit more. So let's go to the camera and move it down something like that. And this will help us to break the emission a little bit more. As you see, we have a little bit more interesting result. And let's go back again and see it again. So I'm going to select the texture deformer, and let's go back there, and I want to change the timing. As you see, when I hit play, the deformer is not animated, right? So we want to animate that to add more variation. So I'm going to right click on the time and click on create new expression. And here I'm going to copy that line, copy and paste, and equal to time divided by 20, and let's hit create, and let's see. I think the 20 is too much, so let's divide it by 4, and let's hit edit. As you see now, we have a little bit of animation there. We can add or increase the frequency, and I'm going to really not divide that but multiply that by 2, for example, and let's see that. As you see now, the emission is happening. As you see, it's faster now, and this will break the emission a little bit more, and it will make it a little bit more interesting. So let's go back to the camera, and as you see, we have some problem there, so some particles escaping from the collider. So we can select the Bifrost liquid, and there is a cool feature under the Bifrost fluids and called kill field. So let's click on that, and let's go back to the perspective view, and here let's go to the boundary controls, and I want to change that to cylinder, and I want to scale that and match it to the cup, as you see, something like that. And then I'm going to move it down, so something like that. And now if I hit play, now as you see, when the liquid enters the cylinder, they are killed by the cylinder we have created. So you want to invert that. So if I click on invert, so now the opposite will happen now. So as you see, we don't have any liquid. So what we can do, we can scale that up like that. Let's scale it again up, something like that. Okay, so now if I hit play, as you see, we can see now the water, and now we don't have any particles outside the collider because they are killed by the cylinder. So another problem, let's zoom in. As you see, when I fill the cup with water, and you notice at the first 50 frame or more, the cup is not going to be filled with water, and that's because if we go to liquid properties there, and if I scroll down under the emission, there is a really cool feature there called interior particle density. So we need to increase that. So what this gonna do, this will increase the density of the particles. So let's set that, for example, to 2, and this surface particle density will increase the particle amount on the surface, and this will increase it inside the liquid. So if I now hit play, and you see now it's better than before. As you see now, the cup starts filling. So now I want to stop the emission at frame 80 or 90, you can choose 92. So how to do that? So I'm going to select the emitter, Bifrost emitter, and here in the continuous emission, I'm going to right click and choose set a key. Then I'm going 1 frame, and then check that off, and then set a key again. Now the emission will stop emitting particles at frame 81. As you see, we stop the emission. So we are going to continue in the next lesson.